couple things as we get started. Okay, this is ideally what our finished project is going to look like. Now you notice on this professional piece of paper that I gave you copies of, I literally took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 7 pictures and copied them onto one page. All right, so it doesn't look very good. But the idea is, as we start to build this, if you look, we're going to have here, we're going to have 5 columns, or 5 rows rather. Row 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 2 columns. All right, once we start to do this, and we go through this, this will be our naming structure right here. So every control that you see there as we start to create them, it'll help if you name them that. And the reason for that is what we'll look at, we'll get as much of this done today as we can, continue on with it next week, but ideally by the end of next Tuesday we'll have this whole thing built and hopefully even start to get into the code. What I will do, I don't have it right now, but I will by next class. I'll have the completed version out there. All right? So it'll all be out there. So we're going to create what are called some linear layouts. And though that doesn't make any sense to you right now, don't worry about it. When we first begin to create this, it's going to look pretty ugly. It's going to look a lot like this. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that looks pretty ugly. Medium text, medium text, medium text, a slider, medium text, medium text, medium text, medium, etc. All right, that's fine. But that's how we're going to create it to begin with. Not only that, this is the way it's going to look in our outline view. So I put that on there so you can kind of look at it and map yours up with that one to hopefully make sure that they do line up. And when we get done, before we add the code, this is pretty much what it's going to look like right here. All right, and it's even simpler than the one that we did for iOS. All right, it's very similar, but it's simpler. Now, how you follow along with this, what you do with this, this is up to you. But literally, what I did in writing this thing, this handout that I gave you, all right, is literally I went through a book, gleaned it off, looked at it, tried to do things to make sure that they worked, put in some hyperlinks, etc. All right, so I'll take total blame for this. It's not credit, but I'll take it. If there's any problems with it, if you see a problem or if you see I think you missed, then let me know. I'll fix it. You know, I've got copies. For some reason, you know, I don't know why. I think that God is telling me that I'm getting old, because now it's averaging once every other week I'm forgetting the mouse. And the touchpad on the school's computer that I take home doesn't work. It works while you're getting ready to log on. All right, so I can do this, you know, but as soon as I log on, it doesn't work. So what I had to do yesterday, remember the old little eraser point? You know, that's what I used yesterday. Okay? And I spent 2.5 hours on that. And I saved it, and I got done, and I thought, oh, I forgot to put that in. And guess what? It didn't save. Even though I saved it, and it told me it saved, it didn't save anything. So I came in here and redid it this morning at 6. All right? So like I said, I don't think there's any errors in here. We'll find out. If you see anything that looks funky, let me know. All right? And I tried to really break it down into its most fundamental form possible. So if you're not in the virtual desktop, get into the virtual desktop. If you don't have the emulator running, please start up the emulator. All right? And now that I'm looking, I don't see my emulator. It was there this morning. So that's interesting. But I'm going to start it up right now. So that's why step 0 on there says, if you have not done so already, please start up your emulator. You know, in the old days, before we were more politically correct, what was it always? Gentlemen, start your engines. Well, now it's people, start your emulators. All right. Couple things as we get started, okay? That one thing that you might want to do is when you look in here, if you're having problems at all with your emulator, or you think you're having problems with your emulator, if you go into Window, John showed me this, and I had done it before, but it had been a while. And you can go to Customize Perspective. You don't have to do this, but I just want to show it to you. But if you go into Window, Customize Perspective, and then you go to Menu Visibility, and you go down to Window, all right, and you go to What was it under window? Show view. There's a thing on there that's got logcat. Not the deprecated one, but this one. You can see that mine's checked. What logcat does is basically it logs everything you're doing during the session. So the reason that can be important is if you start to have problems with your emulator, if you've got logcat up and running, it'll usually give you fairly detailed explanations of what your error might be. All right. Now, let's just say you say, you know what? I've had no problems with my emulator. Nothing's wrong. Well, at a minimum, though, what you might want to do is when you go through here and you start looking at the stuff, all right, you might want to make sure that at a minimum, now notice I've got logcat here, but if you don't have logcat running, you might want your console because it's got your error messages showing in it. All right. All right. So again, I'm going to come in and start up the emulator. Oh, look what came up again. That'll probably mean my emulator won't start. No. That's not a good thing. And we went back just what you did. I went back yesterday and John saw me. I rebuilt everything from scratch. I created it. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. But guess what? That means this could happen to you too. Well, so what I'm going to do, I still want us to get going, okay? Go ahead. I'm not even sure, so I'll totally get out and start it up again. Juno. You're right. Yeah, actually, you're right. Because I had problems with my new Juno because I put a, you're right, I put a shortcut on the desktop and it doesn't like my shortcut. So let's try that. That's a very good thought. All right, so I've got to go over to computer, the C drive, software, droid, there, and there. Thank you. Good thought. The other thing I'm going to do too, which I should have done earlier, is I'm going to make sure I've got XAMPP stopped. So I've got just about everything else. Everything else I can think of is closed. And I did meet with Adrian yesterday, and he said once you got everything where you're pretty sure that everything looks good, he said, I really would like to sit down with you, and I want to make sure that we build it like that from now on. All right, so the guys from IT have been doing a great job. They really do want to work with us. They want it to work. All right, I've already got this. Guess what? I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to delete it, so I'm starting brand new. I get that message sometimes. I don't get that message sometimes. Okay, so I'm going to come in and now let's see if we can start up the emulator. You know, after this happened yesterday, could not find file. No, that isn't good. That's on me, and I keep asking him to bump up what I have of. Yeah, I'm gonna have to close that. I keep asking him to bump up what I have available on here, but I have to keep taking stuff that I have and literally throwing it into the recycle bin and getting rid of it. And usually when I do that, then it works. I mean, it may or may not look like it. There's very little on here right now. There really and truly is very little on here. And what I found yesterday, as soon as I did this yesterday, it worked. All right, I had the same kind of error, not that same error, but the same kind of error. I can go in there too, though. So actually, one thing I should do is what is it? It's not software. Yeah, it's good to say it's not software. It's under program files or something like that. You're right. See if I got any junk under there. Now I should. We'll find out if I'm wrong, but I should be able to get rid of both those. All right. File is too large. Remove it anyway. Yeah, you bet your butt. All right. Let's see if that helped. No, and that happened last night, and I realized that now I had nothing. You know, my wife even said, "So you did work for 2 hours and you've got nothing there?" And I said, "Yeah," and I looked all over for it. I did, and it was just gone. And she's looking at me and she's like, "You're not real happy right now." And I said, "No." I said, "If I actually thought it would help, I would put my fist right through one of my doors." And you might laugh. My oldest daughter, we never got them fixed. She's ruined 2 of our doors because she got so upset. She kicked them real hard and put her foot through both doors. Did it fix her problem? No. And when people say, "Well, that's got to be a Scott thing," well, she is adopted. All right. So it says that it's nurture, not nature. Now, I do have the emulator up, so I should be able to close this. So, all right. And now it looks, at least something's up. That's a good start. All right. So, I'm taking it from the top. So, as always, File, New, Android application, and that's why I put all the steps up here. I'm calling it My Tip Calculator. Again, if you don't like that, if you just want to call it Tip Calculator or something else, it doesn't really matter. All right. I'm going to suggest again that you do use the reverse domain notation just so you get used to it. So something like that. All right. Now, Mr. Wanda told me, and he's right, that on here, this may be the most important thing. So please look up here if you haven't previously. That up here, if you keep it set to that minimum required SDK of 8, that's when it builds that compatible folder in there that is like death. All right, because it doesn't play well with others. So again, what we should be doing on here is coming in and at a minimum using API 14 for our minimum. All right, and I believe that the rest of the stuff that's in there, okay, is okay the way that it is. Now, the only other thing I want to mention to you is we're actually going to use some colors in here. And guess what? We're going to use some of the holo colors. So you're going to see that in here. All right. All right, so I believe everything in here is okay. And hopefully everybody has got that. Can I go on? All right. Go ahead. Under what? Package name? That should fill up. I changed it. It originally said com.mytipcalculator. What that might mean is you may already have one by that name out there on the system. And you might say, "No, I don't." Even if it doesn't show right there, if you deleted it, but you didn't delete it from disk, it still is on the system. It's just not showing. You know real fast because if you take a name that you used to have, but just put a number at the end of it or something like that. Everybody's cool, though, with what's up here, correct? Yeah, you can if you want to. Like I said, the reason that I'm doing it that way is that's the way it's most often that it's done in business and industry is to use the reverse domain notation. All right? All right. Any other problems? Questions? All right, so I'm going to click Next. That brings us to here. I've never done a lot as far as really looking into some of the stuff that's in here. The Create Custom Launcher icon, that is just says use the default, which is what we're doing. create an activity, you always want to do that. All right. Mark this project as a library. I'm not sure what that is, so I've never done it, and it's not defaulted. Create project in workspace. That should be wherever your workspace is. All right. And add project to working sets. I'm not sure what that is. I even asked John about that the other day. We didn't know, so we clicked it, and then it allowed you, if you wanted to bring in a bunch of other stuff from your disk. See, I'm looking at it that you're building this project to add it to a library. That's how I read this. So if you were going to go and create your own library and you wanted this project to be a part of your own library, then it's kind of like you donating books to a library. It'd be the same kind of way, but with this project. We're not there. All right. So we're going to next again. And now it asks for the icon. Okay. And again, that's fine, so we're going to next again. Now, when you go through this, we are going to use blank activity, but just so you see the other stuff, it does give you a little picture of, for the other ones, kind of what they're expecting to do. Virtually everything that we do now and most of the stuff we do next semester will all be blank activity, just so you know that. All right, which is the default, so I'm going to click next again. This, literally, if you wanted to, I'm not going to, but if you wanted to, if you said to yourself, I don't like this. I want it to be main because it's main in every other language. You could change that to main. Since it is the name of a method, all right, what's requested is that you make it start with uppercase. You don't even have to do that. All right? Just ask Travis. For every 2 classes that he creates, one has got uppercase and the next one's got all lowercase. Then he mixes them in real weird ways. But he gets his stuff to work, which I guess is the most important part. All right. Yeah. Same thing with the activity main. It doesn't have to be this. These are just the defaults. But we're going to leave them as that. So I'm going to click finish. The good news is that there are 33 steps in here, and we've already done the first 13. That's the good news. The bad news is most of the other ones take more time than this. And, one thing, if many people who know me outside of here, if they heard me saying what I'm about to say, they'd laugh. I'm one of the most impatient people in the world. All right? But you have to be patient when you're doing this. That's all I can tell you. If you got Logcat running, you might even get some messages in red. All right? Ideally, they'll be few and far between. If you got the console running, you might get a message in red. All right? And just so you know, even if I sit there and work with Adrian, and if we set this thing up perfectly, and he creates an image for me, and he says, hey, there's this new image, try it. And I say, boom, it's great. Make everybody's like that. There's still a chance that next spring, we're still going to have some of these problems. All right? I don't know why. They don't know why. But it just may happen. A weird thing happened to me yesterday with this. When this came up right here, where it says hello world, right where my mouse is, it came up and it was literally about 10% that size. Literally, it was about this big. It was really, 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 really tiny. And I closed it and opened it, and it didn't like that. And I restarted Eclipse and brought it up, and it came up just fine. Yeah. Yeah, we've got that. And again, notice with states, if you wanted this to be a landscape, you can change it here. So there are different things, you're right, that you can do. Yeah, like you said, there's the magnifying glasses here, etc. All right. But even after I did that, it was making its way back to the other sides. Now, what I'm going to show you is the way that Untitled, all right, recommends that you do this. This isn't exactly the same way as the handout that I gave you before. And to me, that's a good thing. All right, because you'll see a couple different ways of pretty much creating the same thing. All right, and it's funny. I found a really good article that I was reading through right before lunch. It's about Swift, and you can either laugh or you hit yourself in the head or hit me in the head, because they have a really good first thing to get you going and start working with playgrounds. Then the next one, they make a tip calculator. which I just thought was kind of funny. I don't know why, but I did. All right. So right now when you look up here, this is called the outline view or the outline pane or the outline window. Goes by a lot of different names. But the point is, it says outline here. If I wanted to do things right now, and we're going to in just a minute, but if I wanted to do things right now, notice all this stuff that's here, that's kind of like our properties window for this. If I go down and click on the text view, the stuff that's in there changed. Maybe not everything, but some of it changed. Because again, there are going to be times in this handout, and I mean scores of times, on these 8 pages where you're going to hear properties window. That's what we're talking about. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. So the first thing that we're to do here is to literally take our mouse and single click where it says text view. Then you've got your choice. We could right mouse click and choose delete on the bottom. And that's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing it. But when we click it, you can just hit the delete key too. That's it. So I want you to get rid of the thing there that said hello world. We don't need that. So yours should look then, hopefully, like this looks right now. When we build this, going back to what I showed you before, going back to this, when we build this, again, we're going to have 5 rows, and each row will have 2 columns. All right? And one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to change our layout, which right now, all right, right now when you look at our layout, it's of type relative, which means put as much stuff in a row as you can. Does that make sense? It's kind of like the flow layout that we had. Bless you, I think that was a sneeze. It's kind of like the flow layout that we had in Java, but we don't want that. It looks like yours, Mike doesn't say my tip calculator. That probably means when you set it up at first and for the name, you either gave it one and removed it or something happened. I wouldn't worry about it. All right, I think there's a way to go in and you can change it later, but all right. What I want us to do right now, though, all right, what I want us to do is I want us to come up here, and we just did step 15. So again, we're going to use a grid layout, and I mentioned this on the bottom of page 1, and it goes up to page 2. All right, and they talk a little bit about this. For lack of better words, it's like we're creating a table now. Okay? It's very similar. So what I want you to do is this. Take your mouse, click where it says relative layout, single click, and use the left mouse click, then right mouse click, and you should get this. All right? Just so you see that. And it says assign ID, and it's got other stuff. Well, we want to choose the assign ID because we want to change that ID. But we're going to do that in just a minute. But first, we want to actually change the type that's in here. So my fault. We are going to do that too. All right. So we want to right mouse click on here, and we want to choose change layout first. Okay. So right mouse click and choose change layout. You could literally build this thing, and one of the reasons I decided to do this was to show you the different layouts. So choose change layout, and it's going to bring up something in the middle of the screen momentarily, but again, be patient. All right. So you'll notice that the default to change it to is what we want to change it to, which is grid layout. All right. But you'll notice there's a bunch of other kinds in here also. All right. Some of them I've used. Many of these I have not used. You might say, well, why don't we choose table layout? We could do that also. We're just going to use grid layout. All right, now notice what happens when I choose grid layout. First of all, notice it says here flatten hierarchy. All right, well, that's one of the first things that I thought, well, you know what? If I'm in this class, I'm thinking, hey, Jeff, what the hell does that mean? All right, so optimizing layout hierarchies. And they talk about that in here, and they say that if you want to, you can flatten the layout, which makes it more shallow and wide rather than narrow. All right, rather shallow and wide rather than narrow and deep. And the reason that can be important, not with what we're doing, because this is a fairly simple layout, but if you've got layouts that have layouts inside of them, etc. Kind of like we did with layouts in regular Java. All right, this can take a long time to load. All right, so typically what you will want to do is when you're doing this, you'll typically want to leave that checked. Okay, so I'm leaving it checked. I've chosen grid layouts. I'm not going to even preview it. I'm just going to click OK, and it changes it. All right, but it doesn't change it to the name I want. I only want it to be called grid layout, and it's called grid layout 1. So you know now from what I just mentioned is you can right mouse click on this, and now you can choose edit ID. All right, which is what we're going to do. And all I want to do is I want to remove that. I want to remove the 1 from there. Notice how this literally has 2 names. Can everybody see this? I'm not clicking yet on purpose. It says XML, and then it's got @ID/grid layout, and Java, r.id.gridlayout. I want you to understand, bless you, this may not totally make sense to you. When we create this stuff, when you create the layout the way we're doing it right now, the way that I'm going to show you, if you didn't want to do it this way, if you didn't want to do it the way that we are going to do it, which basically says that we're in graphical layout, and we're adding things as we want to add them, the other way that we literally could do this is we could go over to the activity main XML file and build it all in XML. Some developers choose to create all of their interfaces in XML. Some do it the graphical way. Some do a hybrid. But regardless, what happens is basically Java keeps track of both the ones that you're using. All right? And that's why notice that the Java one is in that R file. That's in that file you never change. Just in case what you do, if all you do is you create everything using XML, when you go to compile the program, it does all that referencing for you, and it takes all those XML controls and makes them into Java equivalents. Does that make sense? So that's one file you never want to jack. You don't want to jack with anything in that R folder, period. Because that's all stuff that's being created for you. You can look at it, just don't change it. Don't remove a comment. Don't do anything to it. Because it's all stuff that's being machine generated for you. One thing that is kind of cool about it is if you do go up and take a look at it after the project's done, they use pointers. They don't call them that, but when you look at it and you notice they're working with addresses and stuff, that's what they're doing. All right. And update references. Okay? You always want to have something like this checked, because what that update references means is it's going to go through refactoring, like you can go through refactoring in Eclipse also. But what that will do is any place that that's referenced now internally, not just where you see it right here, but any place that it's referenced internally as grid layout 1, it'll automatically change it to grid layout. Okay? So, just okay, boom. Now it's changed. Now, I mean, that you might say, well, that took a long time just to do that, and it did. But I wanted to make sure you hear that. So now in the middle of page 2 there, it says the relative layout name is now grid layout 1, so we just changed that. There is a shortcut. They call it a shortcut. You can do Alt plus Shift plus R also. Anytime I've got to do more than 2 keys at a time, I don't consider that a shortcut. All right? But if you want to do it that way, you can do it that way also. Now notice we're up to step 17. It says if it's not already selected, select the grid row. It is. All right? Then in its properties area down here, this is where it gets a little bit confusing. All right? The first thing I'm going to do is widen that out just a bit. Okay? I widen that out a bit so it's easier for me to see what's going on in here. All right? If I want, I can drag up here so I can make it bigger. Eventually, we're going to add more stuff here, so I don't want it to be that big. But for now, there's not a problem with that. All right, it says in its property area, change the column count field. All right, so I might have to look for that. Column. Well, is that column count? Well, I move over column count. All right, so I want to change that. It says here, I want to change that to 2. That means just what you think it means. So I put that in there and hit enter. It doesn't look any different on here. All right. But the system now realizes that we're going to have 2 columns. Okay. That says then set the grid layout's use default margin property to true, which is right below it. Notice here it's green and it's got a check mark on there. All right. If I click the ellipsis, well, I didn't want to show it to you that way. If I click the ellipsis, it'll bring it up. I can do it that way. all right, which seems to be a pain to me, or I can just double click it. And you say, well, nothing happened. If I double click in there, it goes, I double clicked it and went to true. I can click it again and I can make it go to false. We want that to be, we want it to be true. Did that make sense, or did I go over that too fast? All right. So yours should look like this. So the only thing we've changed is column count to 2 and use default margins to true. All right. Now, for just a second, I'm jumping back here. All right, so I've shown you that one. Now I want to show you this one. All right. Notice here it says DP, density independent pixel. All right, it says a virtual pixel unit you should use when defining a layout to express dimensions or positions in a density independent way. Let's put that into English. When you are creating stuff and stuff is going to be a certain size, you with me? So I don't care what it is, but if I'm creating stuff, and when I say stuff, I mean my GUI. They could be text boxes, they could be buttons, they could be anything. If I want to work with area in there, if I want to work with size, you work with DPs. Did you hear what I said? On the other hand, if you're working with font, all right, and you want to work with font sizes, that's SP. All right, so DP is density independent pixels, and I think SP is scale independent pixels. All right, but the idea is unless you're working with fonts, it's DP that you're going to be working with. All right, and it says here, this indicates that the grid layout should place a gap of 8 DPs between views. That's like a pixel. So if you've ever worked with pixels, all right, but again, it's density independent pixels. So it scales itself with 8, and the 8 pixels that it does will be different if you're using a mobile phone as opposed to if you're using this computer here, as opposed to if you're using a tablet. All right? And that's what the author, I believe at least, is trying to say in here. Okay. So, look at that. We're already down to step 18. So we're ready to start adding stuff. Again, what I'm going to show you is a way of doing it. I'm not going to, be so pompous as to say it's a way of doing it and it's the best. It is a way of doing it, and the good news is once you start creating these, what you'll end up doing sooner or later, probably what we'll do when we start up again in spring is we'll create a simple project the first day, and we'll do it all using the XML so you can see the difference. All right, so this one we're not using XML hardly at all in here. All right, but again, there's a lot of different ways that this stuff can be done. All right, so what we want to do, going back to here, is we now, if you can imagine, this is what we want to be done with when we get all finished. All right, so where are we right now? Well, we're right there, except for everything that's on the screen isn't there. That's not a joke, all right, because we have set it up to 2-column format. So we do have this kind of format has now been set up. We're going to have to do some work to get it to do what we want it to do, but that's what we're going to do next. All right, so the way that I broke this down was I said, okay, let's start filling the stuff up. So let's do the first row, then let's do the second row, then let's do the third row, then let's do the fourth row, then let's do the fifth row. And you'll notice, once we get there, we've done the first 22 out of 33 steps. All right. When we get to that point, when we're at that point, then after we get down to there, it should look pretty much like this. Again, still pretty darn ugly. All right. And this should pretty much look like this, but we're getting there. All right. And just so you know, if you say, this, I'm sorry, Jeff, this just bugs the hell out of me. All right. Where it says medium text there, I just went in there, manually changed it to amount. You are not supposed to do that. You are supposed to use the actual XML file, the strings.xml file to change that. Why? Because that has localization, which is a weird word, but it's a localization hooked up with it. So if you wanted to write this in other languages, all right, you could do that. But now if you go and hard code it in there, that's considered the worst thing to do. Now, let's just pretend, for example, that all I had in here was just literally a % sign. something like that, it might make sense to just hard code it in. All right. And it's not that hard coding it in is necessarily, oh my God, what you did is terrible, you should be arrested. No, but it's not considered the right way of doing things. All right. So what I'm showing you is not maybe the best way, but I'm showing you one of the more accepted ways of doing things. All right. So you've got it right here. We're on page 2 near the bottom. All right, step 18. It says first we're going to add the first row by adding 2 text views and the edit text. All right, it says please refer to the figures as necessary rather. All right, so I'm going to start with these. I'm going to drag a medium text view in, as it says, drop it on there, and as it mentions, it'll create a text view and it'll have the text in it, medium text. Then we'll right mouse click on it and change its ID. All right. For now, as it says, leave the default text as is. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to come back over here. All right. And you'll see for text views, that's a standard one. There's a large. There's a medium. All right. So I'm literally just going to take it and drag it right there. And there it put it. Again, other ways we could have done this. We could have taken it and literally dragged it right up on our screen here. Or we could have come in. Notice what just happened. That was just added right there. That was not there before. So we could have gone in through the XML and done it that way also. Again, all I'm trying to tell you is there's at least 3 different ways this can be done. At least. All right. So right now, it's called Text View 1, which, as you know, is a terrible name. So we're going to right mouse click on that. And notice on here, because I've done it before, and I'm just trying to alert you to things that I've done before. When you want to change the name, it's edit ID. All right, but notice what's first. Not edit ID, edit text. So if you accidentally came in here and chose edit text and changed that one to, what is that going to be? It's going to be amount text view. That's what it would say in here. Does that make sense? We want to change its ID, so I'm going to go to edit ID, and where it's got this, I'm going to make the changes. And we want this to be called amount text view. So it should look like this. And again, notice as it says, it's telling me that it's making a change into my XML file. It's telling me it's making a change into my R.dot file. Does that make sense? All right. So it's upgrading and updating stuff for me. All right. And again, as shown before, it's updating any references. All right. So I'm going to click OK. And what you should immediately be able to see then is it's now changed here from text view 1. If you see where my mouse is towards the upper right hand corner, it now says instead of text view 1, it says amount text view. The recommendation is similar to what I told you, what I tell people from the first day of .NET class. Build your interface, rename your components immediately before you add any code. All right? Because there'll be a lot less problems if you do that. If you decide you want to change your class name, same kind of thing. Boom. Change it immediately. All right? All right. For now, as it says, leave the default text as is, because we'll go add that later. All right, so that's a later step. It says step part B on the bottom of the page. It says the tip calculator app only allows for non-negative int inputs. You can say, no, it doesn't. It allows us to put it no. Everything will be integers, but it'll automatically divide it by 100 for us to get the dollars and cents. Bless you. And we did a similar thing with the iOS one that we did. All right. One of the reasons I went to this is the tip calculator that we built for iOS, that was from a Dytel book too. And they're very similar in nature. Plus you're using Dytel for the Swift class, and you're using Dytel for the Android class. If you think these books bite, and I'm being serious, I want you when you do your course evals to write that down, and I guarantee you that they won't be used again. The problem is, as you know, there's about 10 Swift books that are supposed to hit the market by the end of the year. How many of them are available now? That would be none. All right. I finally got sent the thing. They said, oh, an early look at Swift. Good. And they gave it to me. What is it? It's a guy doing tapes, telling you to buy his book. He's pretty good. All right, I've watched the first couple of them. All right. Okay. So, it says now we're supposed to go again to the palettes form widget section and drag a number edit text. All right. So what does that say? It says we want to go over to the form widgets section. I don't remember where that is. Is that under text fields? Oh, we're at the top. Thank you. And I don't think that's the right one. That's what it said, but I don't think that's right. I think it is down here under text fields, because there should be one down here that says 42. So there's the first mistake we found. On form widgets? Okay. On anything here. Icon and text. Oh, okay. Did you see that? So right mouse click and choose. It's not there now. All right. So show only icons. All right. That's really bad. Yeah, I think that might make it easier to read. All right. There are a bunch of them, though, because some of these are associated with numbers and some of these are not associated with numbers. All right. And we want to make sure that the one that we use is indeed associated with numbers. So previews, no, I don't like that. Small previews, yeah, that's what we had, I think. So I'm literally going to go down to text fields. All right, I'm going to go down to text fields. I'm going to find that one that says 42. Just so you know, what's the difference between this one and this one and this one? It's what you think it would be. This one says only positive numbers. This one says positive or negative, but these are both integer only. This says float. Does that make sense? Why does that matter? It matters because as you're building the app, why not do it right to begin with? At least that's the way I feel. All right, so I'm going to grab the one with the 42 and I'm just going to drag it over here and drop. And there that is. Okay? What's that? Wait. No, we're not. We're dividing by 100 in here because that's the way that it's set up. All right? And what was your question? No, the one with just the 42 on. So I'm going to remove this and add it again. So this one here with the 42, I'm clicking with the left mouse button and dragging right onto my grid layout, and boom, it puts it there. Now you can, once you've got it, just if you listen to this, you don't have to look, but if you listen to this, let's say that you're halfway through it. You start, I got everything right, but I've screwed up the order in this stuff. You can do copy and, you can cut and paste, so you can move stuff around. All right, so if you do screw something up, you can change it. Now, one reason I like doing it this way as opposed to this way is look what this does. See, it looks like it's off the screen right now. And the thing is, we don't really care. We really don't. What we care about is getting it built right here. All right, and guess what? Even after we got it built right here, we might have some stuff that shows us error messages, and that's okay. All right, because as we keep building this, those error messages should go away. So I'm turning over to page 3 now. All right, and it says here we want to change the ID of this to amount edit text. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to go over here to edit ID and amount edit text. All right, again, it's telling me how it's changing the XML and the Java, and I'm updating my references. Bless you. Everybody there? All right. I'm going to click OK. All right. Is this a good time to take a break? All right, then let's take a break.